Hey, you guys, let's talk a little bit about monogamy. So many couples want it and expect it, but it can be more challenging to them than they kind of anticipate. People can feel like they are so in love that they would never risk being not monogamous, or it's such a part of their value system that they would never be not monogamous. But nonetheless, for some people over time, monogamy can be really challenging. So let's talk about a few variables that can play into that. This is not a comprehensive discussion of monogamy.
Before we start, a small disclaimer. The Sex Doctors podcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice.
But research has shown that some things can make monogamy easier or harder for certain people. Now, one subset of research has to do with genetics. So they did research on prairie voles. So prairie voles are like rats. They're like mountain rats. And so, of course, there's some differences between humans and rats. We're not going to get into that, but only to say that this research shows that there are certain voles that are monogamous and voles that are not. And they found genetic differences between these two types of voles. And so research is sort of ongoing to understand what that's really about and how that relates to humans and what the genetic factors for humans might be. But nonetheless, we can assume that there's some aspect of that related to the tendency to feel comfortable with monogamy or not. In addition, personality variables can play a role. So personality variables that can make monogamy more challenging are extroversion. So that kind of makes sense. If people are extroverted, they get a lot of energy from other people, they like to be around other people, it would make sense that extroverts might have more challenge with monogamy. Now, of course, not every extrovert is going to fall into this category, but research shows some correlation, okay, between extroversion and challenge with monogamy. But there are other personality variables too that can relate. So agreeableness, that's a very interesting one. So if someone is agreeable, it would kind of make sense. They would have a hard time saying no. They would have a harder time setting boundaries. And as a result, that could correlate with a difficulty with monogamy. Also, people who are sensation seeking. So again, that makes sense. So if they like sensation, like sort of gravitate towards sensation, I mean, sex is such a sensational experience, that could play a role as well. What about just some basic logical stuff like availability of attractive partners? So some people live their lives like with work or whatever, where they're surrounded by attractive people that might make themselves available. Like an exaggerated example could be a sports figure. Other people live their lives a little more isolated. They don't have a lot of attractive people offering themselves. So you could see you need different amounts of like self-control. It's sort of like if you worked in a chocolate store versus you worked in a hardware store, you need more self-control in the chocolate store, right? So it just kind of makes logical sense, but whatever. So that can play a role as well. But also, this sort of desire to live life to the fullest. I've heard this from people who are challenged with monogamy. They say that they only live once, and this is their only opportunity, and they have a harder time with monogamy maybe than folks that don't really feel powerfully around that concept. I haven't seen research about that, but I could just tell you in my therapy room, I hear that. So those are just a few variables that can make monogamy easier or more challenging for people. And what I can suggest is most people want monogamy. If they're in a committed relationship, they want to be monogamous. Okay, so fabulous. So what I would suggest is talk about it, communicate about it. Talk to your partner about what makes monogamy more challenging or less challenging and problem solve around that. I would also suggest you have that conversation kind of regularly throughout your relationship, because things can change and people can feel differently over time. So I would suggest that you don't want to just have that conversation one time, but have it in an ongoing way. Is it a difficult conversation? Absolutely. For many people, it's a hard one to have. But nonetheless, it's less challenging to have that conversation and problem solve around it before something goes wrong than to have it if someone steps out or things start to kind of fall apart in the relationship. So you want to have that conversation sooner rather than later, even though it's a challenging one. And if it feels overwhelming, there's always the option of enlisting a therapist to help you have that dialogue.